Metro Bank, the first ever champion partner of women's and girls cricket, have joined forces with the ECB to launch the Metro Bank Girls and Cricket Fund. This initiative aims to triple the number of girls' cricket teams by the end of 2026. We know that women who play sport are more confident, have better career opportunities and social mobility, and that's why Metro Bank is getting more women and girls to participate in cricket. Through the Girls and Cricket Fund, Metro Bank want to support anyone interested in being part of this change to become a cricket volunteer or coach today. To find out more, visit metrobankonline.co.uk/cricket. Hello and welcome to the Wisden Women's Cricket Weekly Podcast. I'm Rana, and with me, as ever, is Lauren Winfield-Hill. Lauren, we've had a couple of more England, New Zealand ODIs. We'll get to them in a bit, but it's been a few weeks since we last picked up on the situation around new county contracts for 2025. We obviously talked about how at Yorkshire there's a particularly complicated situation. Yesterday it was announced that Holly Armitage would sign for Durham on a 3-year contract. What are players mulling over at the moment? I guess especially at Yorkshire, because there's a lot to sort of consider for players going into a new system.
Yeah, I think from Holly's, let's use Holly as the first example. I think for somebody like her, who's very much, within touching distance of playing for England, consistently, I guess. Same with, somebody like Bess Heath, in terms of those players that are very much in the sort of future plans and on the fringes, makes total sense because you won't want to play tier 2 cricket for 1 year. Like that's crucial with where they're at in their development and their career. I think it's different for younger players. I think sometimes for younger players, I guess it's all like very much in the talk of the teams and all that sort of stuff and it's easy to get sucked into the vortex of it all and not have a long-term view. I think for younger players who maybe aren't playing consistently, are carrying drinks in tier 1, tier 2 might be a perfect fit for a year, where it's like actually you're almost in a great position where you've got a year's development, so to speak, and then 2026 you're ready to take a key role. So I think it's all like for someone like Holly, it obviously makes total sense because 12 months is a long time in terms of either getting closer or falling further behind with England's selection, and they're going to want to be playing tier 1 cricket. So yeah, like we've spoken about, like it's very much individual. I think it's different for a 21-year-old where they're going to play for another 10 years. So their next move isn't going to be their last move. Like wherever they go, if it's a 2-year deal, a 3-year deal, there's going to be more opportunities beyond that. They've probably got 3 more deals to sign wherever that may be. So, yeah, I think it's just hopefully, for a lot of the players is that they've been really well advised in that, the short-term view, but the long-term view as well. And also probably a little bit of not necessarily getting sucked into where your mates are going or what seems the popular choice or whatever. I think it's been really firm and rigid in that. What do you want from your career? What's important to you? Are the people important? Is the role important? Is the coach important? Where you're living? All that sort of stuff, rather than just, oh, well, that's a team that's close to me and she's going there, so I'll go there. It's like, well, what role are you going to play?
You talked about players getting good advice. Is this something that players are quite open about at the moment, talking to each other in the dressing room, saying like, so and so has offered me this, so and so has offered me that. This is what I'm mulling over at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's like anything. Like you've got your sort of mates that you lean on and have discussions with. I think there's probably a little bit of talking amongst the people that you're close with in the teams of what you might be thinking, where you might be going, etc. That's all just like natural. It's like anything, any workplace you're in, you use the people that you're closest to. But yeah, like it's just I think it's players making the right decisions for their careers and their opportunities. And there'll be some more obvious choices with certain teams, they might be desperate for an off-spinning all-rounder. So if you're an off-spinning all-rounder, it's probably a good move for you. But if you're going somewhere that's got 3 off-spinners, it's probably not. And it's been informed. I know the PCA have been sort of trying to help players. That I think the other thing is, like, a lot of players, younger players particularly, don't have managers and things like that, where I would just pretty much leave it to my agent to get all the information from all the best options and then make a decision from there, where a lot of them don't have agents or managers, and trying to deal with these decisions on their own and speak to directors of cricket as a 20-year-old, I can imagine is pretty daunting. And you probably don't know what you want to ask for, or what you don't want to ask too many questions, or questions where you might be asking for more than they think you're worth, or not asking for enough. I think probably more on the other side in female sport particularly is you sort of undersell yourself. So yeah, it's having a good little support network and people to discuss the best options for you, and that's different to you. Might be different to your best mate or teammates that you've played with for the last year or two. But yeah, hopefully, like I say, particularly I don't worry about the youngsters, but it's pretty difficult scenario for a lot of youngsters. Whereas senior players or people that have been around a while generally have managers and agents, and also they sort of know the right questions to ask.
Yeah, it's quite interesting seeing how the squads are building up at the moment. Some counties haven't announced that many players, but Surrey, for example, have announced 12. I remember at the start of it, I was sort of wondering how different will the squad makeup look in the county system versus the current regional system. And Surrey have pretty much exclusively recruited within the South East Stars setup. So already you're getting the impression that it will look reasonably similar next year. Obviously, some people will move, but actually at the moment, it looks like the county set in terms of like what the teams actually look like will look quite similar.
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll be very individual for the teams. Like, you'll use the Surrey example. It's like, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it. They're a pretty good regional team. They've got probably arguably the best domestic players in the country that are readily available fairly frequently. Besides, your Sophia Dunkleys, your Alice Capseys, ADR, Bryony Smith, players like that, Tash Farrant, they've been very available, which I think is a really big thing in terms of, like, if I was a DOC, then I'd be saying, look, we want the best teams that is most available for us. I think it looks great to have England players on your books, but they never play. So you're not boosting anything by doing that. Whereas you look at someone like Surrey, and that's no surprise at all because they've got a great squad already. It works. There's nothing that they're really missing. They've got leg spin, they've got off spin, they've got left arm, they've got batting. And then obviously they're like the only one that they haven't necessarily got is like that keeping all rounder, which they fill that with the overseas. So whereas some teams who potentially have underperformed and things like that, they'll probably look quite different, I'd imagine, because essentially you've got a really good opportunity to do things differently if it's not worked. If you're a team that's not been in finals or finals days and things like that, it's like, well, no disrespect, but you're obviously not good enough. So you need to try and recruit players who are good enough that are going to add to what you've got. And go heavy. Like, if you need an experienced bowler or an experienced batter, you're going to have to push pretty hard to get them. Because if that's what if that's what you really believe is missing, then you've got the art of persuasion, innit? You've got to get people that you need. Whereas Surrey don't need anyone. So, it might be Vipers might be pretty similar, where actually they've, even if you go back beyond the regional structure and go back to Kia Super League days, the Vipers don't look massively different from then. And we're talking 6 years ago now, or even longer. So they've been really lucky where they've had this like real clean change, but nothing's changed sort of thing. Is that this structure's changed so many times within the ECB, like always chopping and changing comps and whatnot. But actually for them, Vipers, Surrey, even to a degree, like the Loughborough Nottingham The blaze looks very similar to Loughborough University. When they were Loughborough Lightning, you got the Bryce sisters, you've got Bollinger, you've got players like that, Kirsty Gordon, who were playing for Loughborough. So it's been pretty clean. And I think teams that have managed to get through those different transitions of structures and remain the same, and that's what we're seeing now, isn't it? Like Blaze have just won the T20 comp. Vipers have obviously been dominant. Surrey have, South East Stars, Surrey, whatever you want to call them, have been there and thereabouts in finals, won finals. And it's no surprises because they've had continuity.
One Stars player that we've not really talked about so far this summer is Tash Farrant, who's in a fascinating position because she's not played for England for 2 years now, but she's been centrally contracted for the last 2 years. It's 11 years since she first played for England. She's still only 28, and her game has developed, especially with the bat in recent times, opening quite regularly for the Stars. Where do you see her career going from here? Because it's really interesting that England have demonstrated faith in her in giving her central contracts not only last year but this year. But it's been a while since she played for England.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting one. I was only speaking, we were talking on air at the ODI at Bristol, and I think it was me and Lydia Greenway that were on air, and we're talking about this big talent pool of fast bowlers that England have now got. Your Mahika Gores, you've got Reem McDonald-Gay that's in that squad. You've got Freya Kemp's coming back from injury, Lauren Filer, all these players that have sort of come through. And then Tash Farrant's, and I said to Lyd off air, I said, we haven't mentioned Tash. Like, nobody's mentioned it. She's almost like slipped under the radar for a while. I think a big part of that's been she's been so hampered by injury of late. She's really struggled to string a season together for quite some time. And obviously she underwent, she went under the knife and got her back sorted last winter and had that big op in New Zealand, and this is probably her first season that she's managed to string together since that injury and since surgery. But she does almost feel like that one that's just sort of slipped under the radar and not mentioned, and hasn't been mentioned for quite some time. But I still feel like you could do a lot worse than playing Tash Farrant in an England shirt.
And especially with the World Cup in Bangladesh.
100%, I think the skills that she has in that format of the game, like T20 cricket was sort of always her bag, really, in terms of, that she was often selected for T20 stuff, but not for ODI stuff. And I think that's because her skill set really is really well suited to T20 and is reflected really nicely in that format of the game. In terms of, you could almost even, she's the kind of bowler you can almost give her one up top and then more than exclusively use her at the death, because she's so good with her change ups and bowling those crucial overs at the death. So I think it's a really interesting sort of, I guess, point in her career where does she sit in all of this? You've her probably. I think the package that she now offers is very different to what she offered 4 or 5 years ago, where, she was pretty much batting 10 and 11 and wasn't really contributing with the bat. Whereas now we've sort of seen this year domestically, like she's had opportunities high up for South East Stars and she's putting some really good performances with the bat. So she's a much better package than what she was sort of 4 or 5 years ago.
I was just going to say, if she's still got a central contract, even if people in the media aren't talking about her, England still really rate what she's capable of doing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, she obviously was in New Zealand on that England A tour. So that's a reflection of who's close, isn't it? So she's obviously still very much in the thinking of the England Brains Trust, but it's it's one of them. It's hard to know where she's at because she's not been around that sort of squad for quite some time. And I guess the other thing is, they're favouring at present Freya Kemp, who's probably more of a batting all-rounder that is obviously coming back from injury, left arm. But she's probably the flip of what Tash is, where Tash is more of a bowler that offers with the bat. Freya Kemp's a batter that offers with the ball, and I think, you know, it all depends on what they want and which way round they want that sort of all-rounder to be.
Last week we talked about the first England-New Zealand ODI. That series has now been completed. The second ODI was almost identical to the first. It was just slightly different people did the business for England. Eccleston rather than Dean with the wickets in the second game. And then Maya Bouchier went one better, 50 in the first game, 100 in the second game. Some really good maths, I thought, from Maya at the crease to ensure scoring 100 out of 142 runs is some going. And then in the third game, it was slightly different in that New Zealand fared slightly better with the bat. It was pace that did most of the damage for England. England had a bit of a wobble in the run chase, but they got over the line in the end. Lauren Bell had a really good game, taking 5 wickets, her first 5-wicket haul for England in ODI cricket, and afterwards she was very honest about changes that have been made to her action over the last few months, trying to get the ball to move away from the right-hander as much as she gets the ball to move in, and all the struggles that come with it. I guess from a character point of view, it must be so encouraging that one of England's most dependable seamers, she's still quite young, is looking to advance her game so much, even at this point in her career.
Yeah, no, it's been, and she spoke so well, hasn't she, Lauren Bell, about it, in terms of it has been challenging. And I think, you know, fair play to her, trying to make adjustments in the spotlight in international cricket is not easy. And I don't think that should ever be understated, because, you know, every game you play, you are being judged, and you're probably going out on there knowing that you're not quite sure what's going to come out today, because you are making changes. Your body feels different. You feel different at the crease. Some days she's really struggled for control. But she's almost learning on the job, isn't she? So I think a lot of credit's got to go to her bravery to do that. And I think, you know, there's no pockets of time to be able to do it out of the spotlight now, is there? You know, she obviously had a little bit of time off at the start of the summer to rest and then come back in and sort of remodel her action. But you're very quickly thrown into the thick of it again before you've had opportunity to groove those changes in training. So yeah, I think it's really nice, isn't it, when you see like the rewards. I think probably so soon, really, in terms of like the difference from Durham to Bristol was remarkable. Durham, she really struggled from control. She was missing her length, she was missing her lines. Whereas Bristol, I sort of felt like from the first 3 balls, you could tell something was better, something was clicking better. She was running in a little bit harder, and she sort of hit the slice hard the first few deliveries. She was right on a good length early. Whereas at Durham, it was quite, there was half volleys, and then there was big misses down leg side, misses offside. So I think to change that around in basically a week, was remarkable, really. And I think, you've got to give somebody credit for having the courage to stick with it when it's not going well. Like, it's so easy to be, this isn't really working, I'm not getting the outcomes that I want, and revert. But to stick at it and to keep that like bigger picture in mind is takes a bit.
Also, she's 23 years old. She plays pretty much as much for England as any other seamer. It's almost like quite easy to rest on your laurels a bit, but to actually like take that risk and actually be like, no, I wanna add more weapons to my armory. That is a really encouraging thing, and it won't just be Bell; it will be the England management around her. It's almost like not very English. English cricket sort of like focuses on what it does well, and like doesn't look to expand. But it's like it's really progressive thinking, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's one of those. I think it's probably twofold, really, and I think a lot of credit has to go to John Lewis and the support staff, because honestly, as a player, there is nothing worse than somebody sort of, trying to make changes, but then you're at fear of getting dropped, or you're at fear of, oh, that's, they're not, it's not working, like we'll do something else. But persevering with those changes, knowing that we've got you, like there's a safety net, we're going to catch you when it goes wrong. But we really believe that at some point it'll go right. I think it's a big environmental factor in that. And obviously the players coming through, like, 4 or 5 years ago, not saying they did, but Anya Shrubsole, Catherine Brunt could rest on their laurels because no one's coming to knock you off your perch. Whereas now it's like, if you're not willing to get better, somebody else will, and they'll pip you to the line. So yeah, I think it's very much the sort of pool of talent that's coming through that's like egging each other on a little bit. And then massive credit has to go to, Matt Mason, who's worked tirelessly with Lauren Bell, John Lewis giving her the safety blanket underneath to catch her at Durham when it doesn't go right, and know that it's all right, just get back on the horse, keep working, like it'll come good, sort of thing. And then, the other thing she spoke about was having a few mental cues. I think, she said that she didn't really think running into bowl previously, and narrowing your focus, isn't it? When you're sort of making changes and things feel a little bit clunky, is almost like, okay, well, what are the two things I'm going to try to do here? Because I'm sort of working my way through it. And I know she spoke a little bit about having a couple of cues that I think it was like Nat Siver-Brunt. I saw on Instagram, it was like reset and focus. And then, in terms of that, I don't know whether they were the cues or that was sort of reminding her to think about her cues. But something obviously clicked for her the other day. And it's always nice to see, isn't it, when someone's, you almost felt for a little bit of Durham, you could tell that her body language, and it's tough, like, to watch a bowler miss and not bowl, not come back on, and that's your primary role. But then when the scripts changed a week later or however many days later it was, and you see it, like, it's a pleasant reminder of how quickly the game can change, isn't it?
But also in terms of, you never really know what's going on behind the scenes. You're looking at and you see a bowler who's not getting their lengths right, they're getting their lines right, and you're thinking, oh, else that they're having an off day. But actually, quite often there are reasons that you don't really know for it. And in this case, Lauren Bell was, she's looking to remodel her action a little bit, and that's a really big thing for a player to do, and especially in such a short space of time. Well, the ODIs are done, and we've got 5 T20s. The first one is tomorrow at the Utilita Bowl, but it finishes in London with a couple of games, the Oval and Lords. So it should be a really exciting series. When England last played white ball games in London, the crowds were really good. So I'm excited for all the games, but in particular those final 2 fixtures at the Oval and Lords. That is everything for today's show. Cheers, Lauren. Cheers, listeners. Thank you for listening to the Wisden Women's Cricket Weekly Podcast. We'll be back at exactly the same time next week. And remember that in partnership with the ECB, the Metrobank Girls in Cricket Fund strives to increase the number of girls' cricket teams threefold by the end of 2026. By fostering supportive and inclusive environments for both cricket coaches and players, this initiative seeks to remove obstacles and create more confident women. Join the movement and champion the future of girls' cricket.